one more invitation song in His history. I want you to know that I have come to love and appreciate this church. I came to serve, but I have been served. I came to bless, but I have been blessed. I came to encourage, but my, you have encouraged me. And to the elders of this church, I just want to say thank you for the invitation to be with you. Brother Will has planted a lot of seed. I've been here for a few days to put a little water on that seed. And God will continue to give the increase. But what a joy, what a blessing it's been to be with you. I want to thank you for the way that you have listened to these old long sermons. You know, in local work, maybe the preacher can preach for 20, 25 minutes, but in these revivals, I get excited and I preach for 35, 40, 45 minutes every time. Some of you are sitting there thinking, we know. I am reminded of that little boy that attended the Church of Christ for the very first time. He had never been to the Church of Christ in his life. He went with a friend of his. And when it came time for the song service, the song leader got up, announced the first song, and the guest, the visitor, leaned over, whispered to the friend, "What does that mean?" And this little buddy, his pal, explained about the song service of the church. Then it came time for communion. The men of the church came up, gathered around the table, and the guest, the visitor, leaned over, whispered to his little buddy, "What does that mean?" And his little friend explained about the Lord's Supper, how that the bread is the body of Jesus, the grape juice, the blood of Christ. And then it came time for the sermon. And on this Sunday morning, the preacher got up, and as he usually did, he did this. He took off his watch, and he placed it before him, and the little guest, the visitor, leaned over, whispered to his friend, "What does that mean?" And the little boy said, "That don't mean nothing, not a thing. Well, I'm going to do this tonight. I'm going to take off my watch and place it before me, and who knows? Who knows? Don't want to give you a lot of hope, but who knows? It may mean just a little bit of something." I want you to open your Bibles, please, to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It comes right before 2 Corinthians. Good place for it, right? 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I'm excited about singing the invitation song tonight. Will anybody be saved? Will anybody come and say, "Hey, pray for me"? Will you be praying about that even as I speak to you tonight? You know, so far, God has blessed us at every service. There have been public responses at every single service, Sunday morning and Sunday night, and Monday night, last night. And who knows what God may bring to the table tonight. Well, I'm excited about singing that invitation song. Tonight we go to 1 Corinthians 13. Monday night I talked to you about faith. You remember, fantastic faith. And then last night we talked about hope, heavenly hope. And tonight, lasting love. 1 Corinthians 13. Let's start in verse 1. Paul said, "Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not love, I am become a sounding brass or a tingling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I can remove mountains and have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned and have not love, it profits me nothing." Love is patient and is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect, complete, is come, then that which is in part shall be done away. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as I'm also known. And now by faith, Monday night, hope, Tuesday night, and love tonight. And now by faith, hope, love, these three. And the greatest of these is love. And that's 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Audience, there's a word that Paul uses in this chapter chapter about 9 different times. And of course, the word that I'm talking about is this one. It's the word love. And now by faith, hope, love, these three, and the greatest of these is love. Question, what is love? We talk about it. We preach about it. Tonight we sang about it. A Common Love. Beautiful song, Will. By the way, he not only is a great preacher, he's a great song leader, huh? You're blessed. You're blessed. But we sing about love, talk about love, preach about love. What is love? Well, I want to tell you what it is. Before I do, let me tell you what it's not, okay? I want to tell you what love is. Before I do, let me tell you what it's not. In the first place, love is not trivia. What does that mean? It's not small. It's not insignificant. It is not unimportant. I want you to go back to verse 1. Verse 1 of 1 Corinthians 13. Paul said, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, can you imagine being able to have a conversation with the angels? Communicate in the language of the angels? What language do the angels speak? I don't know. But can you imagine being able to communicate with the angels? Paul said, even if I could speak with the angels and did not have love, you know what that would be like? It would be like noise, just empty, vain, useless noise. He goes on to say in verse 2, and though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I can remove mountains. Can you imagine going to the Smoky Mountains in East Tennessee and saying to Mount LeConte, hey, Mount LeConte, get up and go to the ocean. And all of a sudden the mountain gets up and runs to the ocean. Can you imagine having that kind of faith? Paul said even if I had that kind of faith and did not have love, it'd be useless, pointless, it'd be vain. He goes on to say in verse 3, and though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, can you imagine reaching into your billfold, reaching into your purses, ladies, and pulling out your money, all of your money, to feed street people, homeless people, hungry people? Paul said, even if I did that and did not have love, it'd be empty, vain, useless. And then again, he closes the chapter by saying, verse 13, and now by faith, hope, love, these three. The greatest of these is faith. He didn't say that, did he? And now by faith, hope, love, these three. The greatest of these is hope. Oh, no. Now, brothers and sisters, I don't want to live without faith, and I certainly don't want to live without hope. But Paul said, and now by faith, hope, love, these three. And the greatest, at the top of the list, the greatest of these is love. Jesus put it like this in Matthew 22. Somebody said, Lord, which is the greatest commandment? What did Jesus say? Commandment number 1, love God. Commandment number 2, love your neighbor. Jesus said commandment number 1 is to do this. Love God. Reach up for God. Commandment number 2 is to do this. Reach out to your neighbor. Love your neighbor. Commandment number 1, love God with all of your heart, your soul, your mind. Commandment number 2, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So what we're talking about tonight, it's not small. It's not a waste of time. You picked a good night to come to this revival, because tonight we're talking about something that is very, very important, very, very significant. It's not small, it's not insignificant, it is not trivial. In the second place, love is not talk. It's not just words. It's not just words. It's not just talk. I want you to do something. We'll give it a try. I don't want to embarrass you. I love you too much to embarrass you. And it may be a stretch for some of you. It may make some of you feel a little bit uncomfortable. But let's just kind of give it a try, okay? When I count to 3, 1, 2, 3, here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn to somebody in this audience. Maybe the person sitting beside you, behind you, in front of you. I want you to turn to somebody in this audience, make eye contact, and say the 3 magic words. You know the 3 magic words, don't you? They are not, I am bored. They are not, I am sleepy. Oh no, you know the 3 magic words, so let's give it a try, okay? When I count to 3, everybody do it. You ready? 1, 2, 3. I love you. sounds like the day of Pentecost when it was noised abroad. Don't you like that? I tell you, folks, I like that. I like hearing that. I like saying that. But I think about what John said in 1 John 3 and verse 18. The disciple of love, do you remember? 1 John 3:18, he said, My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. What's he saying? Don't just say I love you. Demonstrate I love you. Don't just speak the words, show the words. Because love is not just words. It's not just talk. It's not just saying, I love you. I love you. Let me show you something else. Love is not trivia. It's not talk. In the third place, it's not a trade. It's not a trade. It's not a swap. It's not a let's make a deal. Sometimes we want to do that. We want to make deals. We want to trade. I tell you what, I'll do 1 and 2 if you do 3 and 4. I'll do A and B if you do C and D. I'll take out the trash if you mow the grass. I'll feed the dog if you'll vacuum the car. Sometimes we even say it like this. Love is 50-50. You ever heard that? Mm-hmm. I'll meet you halfway. I'll do my part if you do your part. Love is 50-50. And I think about what Jesus said in Matthew 5 and verse 44. Love your enemies. Love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. And pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you. For if you love them which love you, what reward have you? You know what Jesus is saying? Jesus is saying, no. Love is not 50-50. Love is 100-0. Even if the other person does 0, step up to the plate. Do your part and do 100. Even love those who hate you. Love your enemies. Because love is not, let's make a deal. I'll do 1 and 2 if you do 3 and 4. I'll do this and this if you'll do that and that. Love is not a trade. It's not a swap. It's not a let's make a deal. Let me show you what else love is not. In the fourth place, love is not a tingle. What does that mean? A tingle. It's not just an emotional high. It's not just a good feeling. March the 1st, 1974, many years ago, over 40 years ago. March the 1st, 1974, I met my wife for the very first time. Met her on a blind date. You ever been on a blind date? A friend of ours got us together. I was 17, she was 15. And a fellow by the name of Ronnie. She went to church with Ronnie. I went to school with Ronnie. Ronnie knew both of us, and Ronnie got us together. We went out, had a nice time. And after the date was over, I wanted to walk her to the door and kiss her goodnight. Can you believe that? A preacher on the first date? She was an elder's daughter too. You watch these elders' daughters, okay? I didn't know what to do. You know, we'd had a good time. I walked her to the door. I talked a little bit. Then I said, Sandra, may I kiss you goodnight? And she just stood there. She froze. She just looked at me. So I cleared my throat. Said a little bit louder the second time. Sandra, that's her name. Sandra, may I kiss you goodnight? Silence. No response. Kind of like deer in the headlights. Scared me to death, so I tried it again. The third time. Sandra, may I kiss you goodnight? Still no response. I said, girl, are you deaf? She said, no, boy, are you paralyzed? So I marched over there and I planted one on her, gave her a big old kiss. She pushed it back and she said, where'd you learn how to kiss like that? I said, siphon gas from my daddy's tractor. She said, is it biblical? I said, yeah. Do to others, you would have to do to you. Y'all believe that story? You don't believe that story, do you? Only part of that story is true. Only part of it is true. We did meet on a blind date. It was March the 1st, 1974. A friend of ours did get us together. Yes, I confess, I did kiss her on that very first date. And I can imagine somebody saying, oh, that's love. Love is a good feeling. It's an emotional high. And I've heard people say something like, I'm in love. Oh, you're in love? How do you know you're in love? Man, I feel it right here. I can just look at her and I get goosebumps. I can just reach out touch her and I get a chill running up and down my spine. Maybe she's cold. Somebody says, no, man, I'm in love. See, love is a good feeling. I've heard people say something like, love is a feeling. Love is a feeling that you feel like you're feeling when you feel a feeling that you never had before. And I say, have you ever backed up to an electric fence? If you back up to an electric fence, you're going to feel a feeling that you never felt before. But that's not love, is it? It's not a high. It's not some mushy-gushy feeling. It's not a tingle. You say, Keith, if love is not trivia and talk and a train and a tingle, what is love? Well, what I want to do, I want to share with you the truth. The truth about this thing called love. Go back to 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13. We'll let the Apostle Paul speak to the question tonight. What is love, Paul? He tells us. Let's start in verse 4. Maybe your Bible says charity is love. What is love, Paul? Love is patient. Could I confess something? It's hard for me to be patient. That's not my strong suit. I need more patience. I used to pray for patience. I quit doing that because I know how patience comes. Patience comes when you're knocked to your knees. I don't like being down on my knees. The trying of your faith produces patience. But love is patient. What does that mean? You're going to put up with some things you don't feel like putting up with. You're going to hang in there when the going gets tough. It's steadfastness. It's endurance. Love is patient and is kind. Are you a person of love? You can answer that question by answering this question. Are you kind? Are you kind? Be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another. Ephesians 4, verse 32. In other words, treat people like you want to be treated. What does that sound like, church? Treat somebody like you want to be treated. Yeah, it kind of sounds to me like the golden rule. Matthew 7, verse 12, do to others, you would have them do to you. Treat people like you want to be treated. Because love is patient, love is kind. And then he says, love does not envy. What does that mean? Don't have pain in your heart when somebody does well. When somebody goes to the mountain, don't get down in the valley. Don't be sad because somebody else is glad. Don't be envious. He goes on to say, love does not boast, does not brag. You remember the story that Jesus tells? Luke chapter 18 about the two guys that went to the church building to pray. The Pharisee, the religious guy, and the tax collector, the publican. The Pharisee, the religious guy, stood and he prayed like this: God, aren't you grateful you have me? I fast twice every week. I give a tenth of everything that I own. And the publican, the tax collector, the sinner, standing afar off, did not even look up to heaven, but hid himself right here. And he said, oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Jesus said, I tell you, this guy went down to his house more right than the other guy, because everybody that exalts himself will be humble. He that humbles himself will be exalted. Don't boast. Don't brag. Love is not arrogant. It does not boast. It is not proud. The next one on the list. It's not proud. I think about Proverbs 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination. Do you remember the very first sin on the list? God says, I hate a what? Proud. Look, I don't want you to be proud, people. I don't want you to be puffed up with pride. I want you to be humble. Don't be proud, be humble. He goes on to say, love is not rude. Don't be rude to people. It's not self-seeking. It's not selfish. I think about what Paul said in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. This know also in the last days. Ladies and gentlemen, do you realize we're living in the last days? Do you understand that? We are living in the last days. You say, Keith, how do you know that? The Bible tells me so. This know also in the last days, troublesome times will come. What are you talking about, Paul? For men will be lovers of their own selves. Now he goes on to say, covetous, boaster, proud, blasphemers, disobedient parents, unthankful and unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. But did you notice the very first sin on the list? Men will be what? Men will be lovers of their own. They're going to be selfish. You know why there's so many divorces in America? Selfishness. You know why there's so many church fusses and church fights among us? Selfishness. Man, I got to have it my way or the highway. I'm always right. Paul said love is not self-seeking. Love is not easily angered. He goes on to say it's okay to be angry. Nothing wrong in getting angry. Jesus got angry. But Paul said, Ephesians 4:26, be angry and sin not. Don't be easily ticked off, easily upset, because love is not easily angered. He goes on to say, love keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, what's bad, but it delights in what's good. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. You said, Brother Keith, if love is not trivia and talk and a trade and a tingle, what's the truth about it? I tell you the truth about love, folks. Love is an action. Love is doing. Love is serving. Love is giving. Love is saying, hey, brother, you first. Be second. Love is an action. In fact, I want to make a statement to you. Before we sing the invitation song tonight, you'll hear it about 10 more times. Here's the statement. I want to impress this statement on your heart. It is easier to act yourself into a better way of feeling than it is to fill yourself into a better way of acting. Let me illustrate what I'm talking about. Just give you a few illustrations of what I'm talking about. Here it is, 2 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock in the morning. Little Henry wakes up. Your baby, maybe your grandbaby. He's wet and he's hungry. So you know what he does, don't you? Little Henry. He looks at his watch and says, oh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Mom's asleep and Dad's in bed. I don't think I will bother them. Oh no. If he's wet and he's hungry, you know what little Henry does, don't you? And you know what the loving mother does? The loving mother says, shut up in there, I don't feel like fooling with you. You think that's what the loving mother says? I tell you what the loving mother does. She crawls out of bed, wipes the sleep from her eyes, tiptoes into the room, picks him up, changes him, feeds him, rocks him back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. When he's finally asleep, puts him back into the crib, covers him up, tiptoes back to bed. And ladies and gentlemen, how is Mom feeling now? How's she feeling now? Well, chances are 9 to 1, she's feeling great. Because you always feel better on the inside when you act responsibly on the outside. It is easier to act yourself into a better way of feeling than it is to fill yourself into a better way of acting. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Dad comes home from work. He's tired, he's exhausted. He wants to sit down in his recliner, sip on a little iced tea, watch a little ESPN. But as soon as he gets home, the voice of the woman of the house says something like this. Dog needs fed. Grass needs cut. You ever heard that, fellas? When you get home, maybe on a Monday afternoon, you're tired, you're exhausted, you want to sit down, relax a little bit, sip on a little sweet tea, watch a little ESPN, and the first thing that you hear when you open the door, dog needs fed. And ladies, how do we feel? You know how we feel, ladies? We husbands, I'll tell you how we feel. If we hear that when we come home, as soon as we come home, we hear that, you know how we feel? I'll tell you how we feel. We feel like saying, let the dog starve. That's how we feel. Hey, you want the grass cut? I tell you, you get out there and cut the grass. That's how we feel. But see, the loving husband acts better than he feels. It is easier to act yourself into a better way of feeling than it is to fill yourself into a better way of acting. Here's a brother in Christ. When he works hard. When he plays hard. And he works 40 hours every week. 40 hours a week. But to support his family, he takes on another job number 2. See, he knows what the Bible teaches in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8. If a man provides not for his own, especially for those of his own family, He's denied the faith. He's worse than an unbeliever. And so to support his family, he doesn't want to be an unbeliever. So to support his family, he takes on 2 jobs, another job. And now he's working 70 hours per week. 40 hours at the first job, 30 hours at the second job, about 70 hours. You know anybody who's doing that? 70 hours per week. I have a good friend. And some time ago, he was doing that, a fellow by the name of Mike. He would get up early in the morning, he would go check in at his first job about 8 o'clock, he would work till about 5 in the afternoon, he would leave the first job, he would go to the second job, work till about 9:30, 10 o'clock every night. He was doing that 5 days a week, sometimes on the weekends, about 70, 75 hours per week. And you know why? It felt good. It felt good to get up early in the morning. It felt good to stay out late every night. It felt good to mess up the weekends. And if you believe that he was doing it because it felt good, I have some swamp land in Florida that I want to say, yeah, he wasn't doing it because it felt good. I said, Mike, why are you doing that? You know what he said? To survive. He said, man, I got bills to pay. I have a family to provide for. And I'm doing it to survive. And do you see what I see? He was acting better than he felt. It is easier to act yourself into a better way of feeling than it is to fill yourself into a better way of acting. His name is Paul, an elder of the church. At the time that this happened, he was not an elder of the church, but a friend of mine. He called me up to talk to me. He had sold me some insurance. He was an insurance guy. He had sold me some insurance. I bought the insurance. But then I started thinking about it, and I thought, I don't really need this insurance. And so I canceled the policy. And my friend Paul called me up to talk to me about why I canceled the policy. And I could tell during the course of the conversation on the phone, it wasn't going well. I could tell he was getting upset because I had canceled the policy that I bought from him. In fact, he got so mad. You know what he did? My friend, he hung up on me. Have you ever been hung up on? He didn't say, see you later, come to see me, let's have breakfast together, kiss my foot, none of that. He just slammed down the phone. And do you know how I felt, folks? I'll confess to you how I felt. I felt like getting in my car, driving across town, walking into Paul's office, and wrapping that phone around his neck. That's how I felt. But I got in my car and I drove across town and I walked in and I said, Paul, can we talk? We need to talk. And we talked and we prayed. And today he's still a good buddy. It is easier to act yourself into a better way of feeling than it is to fill yourself into a better way of acting. Some time ago, I was out making some visits for the church. Every Sunday we would have people coming to our church, big old huge church, and I'd go out and try to see some of these visitors. And one day I knocked on a lady's door who had visited our church service, and I was attacked by her monster. I was attacked by a big old dog. I mean, he came barking and growling, and she said from the inside, don't worry, he won't bite. She lied because he bit. You ever been bitten by a dog? I was just trying to do some church work, the Lord's work, and I was bitten by a dog. You know how I felt? You think I felt like saying, oh, you're such a sweet little puppy. Oh, you're such a sweet little dog. You think I felt like saying, I tell you how I felt, folks. I apologize to you dog lovers. I love dogs. I've had dogs, okay? I tell you how I felt on that. I felt like kicking that dog's teeth out. That's how I felt. But I'm glad to tell you, on that occasion, at least on that occasion, I acted better than I felt. It is easier to act yourself into a better way of feeling than to fill yourself into a better way of acting. I was preaching somewhere, preaching one of my fantastic sermons, and I looked out over the audience, and there was a guy in the audience sitting there like this, arms crossed, head bowed, eyes closed. Will, you ever seen anybody do that in church? Eyes closed, head bowed. While I was preaching, I couldn't even keep them away. And do you know how I felt, folks? I felt like just kind of leaving the pulpit, walking out into the audience, getting right in front of the guy and saying in a sweet, kind, gentle little voice, something like this. Wake up! That's how I felt. But I didn't. I went ahead and preached the sermon. And after the sermon, I marched back to the back, started shaking the folks out like I normally do. The guy walked out, he shook my hand. You know what he said? I enjoyed that sermon. And I thought, yeah, I bet you did. Bring the alarm clock the next time, wouldn't you? And then I looked again, and guess what? His eyes were still closed. See, he was sitting in church with his arms crossed, head bowed, eyes closed, not because he was asleep like I thought. He was blind. He was blind. And you're looking at one guy who's so grateful that at least on that occasion, I acted better than I felt. Here we are in church. Brother Will gets up and says, let's all sing. We're all singing away. Oh, how I love Jesus. And we look across the way, and there's a brother just sitting there. He's not singing. He's just sitting there. We want to say to him, hey, brother, we're in church. Aren't you going to sing? Come on, man. Speak to one another, Ephesians 5:19. Speak to me, brother. Come on and sing. You know what it says? Well, I had a hard day. Don't feel like singing. Don't feel like singing. And I think about Paul and Silas in Philippi, Acts 16. Their backs had been beaten. Their flesh had been torn. Blood is dripping off of them. In Acts 16, verse 25 says, at midnight, Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises unto God, and the prisoners were listening. And ladies and gentlemen, do you see what I see? Paul and Silas in prison at midnight were acting better than they felt. How did they feel? They felt horrible. Their backs had been beaten, or their flesh had been torn. But they're singing. They are acting better than they felt. And then we come back to the cross. Oh, rugged cross. They spit in his face, scourge his back, and they nail Jesus to the cross. And how does he feel? The most horrible death in the world. We've talked about the cross this week. And yet, why does Jesus do it? It doesn't feel good. It's hurtful. It's painful. Why does he do it? John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his monogenes, his only one-of-a-kind Son. God commended his love toward us, and that while we were sinners, messed up people, Christ died for us, Romans 5 verse 8. We love him. Why do we love him? We love him. Why? Because he first loved us. 1 John 4 verse 19. Jesus acted on the cross a lot better than he felt. It's invitation time. And the preacher gets up and says, please be saved. We have some people tonight who need to be saved. I think about the story of the Ethiopian. You remember the story? He hears about Jesus. He's reading from Isaiah 53. He says to the preacher, Sir, here's water. Why shouldn't I be baptized? And you remember the story. They stop the chariot. They go down to the water. The preacher in the center, the preacher baptizes him. And when they would come up out of the water, that's really what baptism is. It's going down to the water and they're coming up out of the water. And the guy is baptized. And the Spirit of the Lord, the Holy Spirit, calls away the preacher. And the guy doesn't see the preacher anymore, but he goes on his way what? Feeling good. He goes on his way rejoicing. You know why some people never respond to be baptized? Well, if I walk down that aisle, what will people think of me? What will they say about me? See, it really doesn't feel good to walk down a church aisle. It really doesn't feel good to go public for Jesus. But if you'll do what's right, like the Ethiopian in Acts 8, he was baptized. If you'll do what's right, the good feelings will then come. You, as the Ethiopian, can go on your way rejoicing. We have some people in this audience who need to be baptized. You say, Brother Keith, you're not talking to me because I have been baptized. Don't you been baptized? I want to speak to the baptized believers just for a few minutes. Listen to me. Are you listening? We have some Christians here who need to come home. You need to come home. Maybe you've been away from this church family for weeks or months. Can you imagine? Think about it like this, folks. Can you imagine me leaving my wife and my son at home? Don't even say goodbye, just kind of walk away. And maybe I stay gone for 3 or 4 weeks. Maybe I never call, and they don't call me, and I don't call them. They don't know where I am, but I stay gone for 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 3 or 4 months. And then I come back to the family and I say, hey, I'm back. Everything's okay. Keith, where have you been? We've been worried about. We didn't know if you were alive or dead. Where have you been? Doesn't matter. I'm back. Can you imagine me going back home like that? Well, we don't go home like that. You can't come back to Jesus like that. We have some baptized believers who just need to come and say, I am so sorry. I've not been living right. I've not been doing right. And I want to come back home right. I want to apologize. I want to confess my sins. It doesn't feel good to walk down the church aisle. But I tell you, if you'll do what's right tonight, if you'll do what's right, the good feelings will come. Don't just slip back into church as if I'm okay, you're okay, everybody's okay. The Bible says, confess your sins one to another. Pray one for another, James 5 and verse 16. So what's going to happen on this Wednesday night? Will anybody be saved tonight? Will any baptized believer come and say, pray for me? So far, public responses at every single service, although one came last night just to pray for somebody else. What's going to happen on this Wednesday night? I tell you what we need, folks. We need somebody humble enough, big enough, spiritual enough to break the ice, to come and say, pray for me. And I have a feeling, I may be wrong, but I have a feeling if one responds tonight, another will come. And then another, and more and more and more. We can have revival or we can have a meeting. And I believe there's a difference. We can meet and greet, sing and pray. Nothing wrong with that. Or we can truly be revived, re-energized, brought closer to God. So what's going to happen tonight? Will anybody be saved? Will anybody come and say, pray for me? If you've been away from the Lord as a Christian, come home tonight. Come home right. Let us pray with you and for you.